It is good to have everyone here. My name is Jonathan Reynolds. I'm your host today. I am the CEO of Titus Talent Strategies. We are passionate about helping companies with their people strategy, how to hire, how to engage, how to train, how to develop, how to advance people in their organization. But this webinar is a part of it's a three-part series we're on. We're number 2. We started last week, and it was a transparent look into at the heart behind it was a transparent look into our journey of how we are growing in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we are coming from a position of not having it all together, actually looking in the mirror and saying, I don't like what I see. I don't like what I see of our company. And I want to make a commitment, not just to myself and a commitment to our company, but also the commitment to our clients. We have about 900 clients, mainly in the United States. And our commitment is we're on a journey and we're not looking back. Today is the least diverse we will ever be. And so we wanted to open up a transparent look into how we are not just tackling diversity, but some of the things that we have historically valued. And this is how we want to use relationships and experts in different aspects of the people field to help us grow in this. And so I wanted to invite not a vendor, but partnership and good friends from Emplify to give a story and show how they are helping companies in the area of fostering engagement through diversity and inclusion. And so it is an absolute privilege to have the group here from Emplify. Nicole turned her video off, which is not allowed. I don't know why. That's just not, it's just wrong, actually. You are
here for background support. I am chat, Q&A.
Just reminding me I need to do my ironing. I just see this iron board behind you. I'm like, gosh, I need to do my ironing.
That's a keyboard.
Oh, it is? Oh, I thought it was an iron board. Oh my gosh.
Please put in the chat if anyone still has an ironing board in their homes.
I love it. But no, it's going to be great. Nicole, you got to stay on. Chime in.
All right, deal.
But yeah, it's great. We've been had a relationship with Emplify. I met Adam, one of the co-founders and chief people officer. Met him. It must be 3 or 4 years ago now. And just getting glimpses into their journey and seeing the resource and the powerful tool of Emplify and all that they have as consultants to help us navigate our journey. Adam just recently came out with his, oh, that is weird. Okay. Is it a book or is it not a book? I don't know. It's on the screen. But you can tell I'm using some kind of a background here. But Lead Like a Human. This is a 6-part guide, very, very pragmatic and practical guide to help you on the journey of engagement and leading like a human. I won't give away too much. I'm sure they'll talk about some aspects of this. Okay, but I don't want to shut up now because I'm not the expert on this. I'm on my journey and I want to hear from these guys. So over to you, Adam and Cam and Nicole from Emplify.
Awesome. Jonathan, thank you so much. We're excited to be here. I also am on a journey here too. So just to be candid about that. And I'm really appreciative of Cam joining. So just to kind of talk through our kind of agenda for today, I'll do like a high level engagement education. And then we're also a data engagement company, right? So we measure engagement. We also have a free diversity and inclusion assessment on our website you can download and run. You'll be up and running in just a couple minutes, totally free. And it helps you understand where you are on the journey. How are you communicating? Are there practices that maybe are happening at your company that are being flagged by employees? So feel free to use that resource. And then once I share a little bit about the findings, flip it over and to back to Jonathan, and we'll do just a little bit of a Q&A. And excited to have Cam here because really, even prior to Emplify, Cam has really spent his whole career creating opportunities for minorities, for people who are first generation immigrants, like lots of different scenarios. And he has been one of the most impactful resources to me personally. I feel very thankful and fortunate that that he's on our team, and I've learned a ton just through our dialogue. And so I'm confident that you all that will happen as well today. So Cam, thanks for joining me here as well. So let's start. We're just going to dive in and talk about first like employee engagement, which is what we do. So we talk about the kind of the intrinsic motivation of your team. And we're going to kind of bridge the gap between employee engagement and DE&I initiatives. So employee engagement at its core is how an employee thinks about the business in their head, how they feel about the business in their heart, and how that's impacted by the work they do every day with their hands. And what we're really after from an employee to create a highly engaged workforce is more than just satisfaction. So satisfaction is good. We're not trying to create satisfied workforces. We're trying to create engagement inside of the workforce. Satisfaction asks questions like, am I comfortable in going to stay? I work only enough to meet basic expectations. My company says they value diversity, but engagement is, how can I drive the business forward? Or my heart and mind are in it and I give 115% every single day. I feel valued. And so, you know, to create high performance teams, it's really how do we create environments where the collection of your people are showing up and bringing their best self to work every day. And when we talk about what makes a person engaged, we really look at 17 different drivers. And simply put, what causes disengagement at the macro level, so apart from DE&I and inclusive of it, but is when teams of people all have a common issue up on the screen, that they're all having a common issue. That is where dysfunction, where performance, where turnover, that's productivity, that's where that happens inside of an organization. And so I left one of these off because as we move to talking about DE&I, there is one driver in particular when we're looking at underrepresented groups that I think is really critical to monitor and what we've seen in our data, and that's the fairness driver. The fairness driver gets at, does that employee believe that the decisions made, one, it's tied to compensation, and we all know about the discrepancies as it relates to compensation inside of organizations, whether it's based on race, ethnicity, gender, whatever it may be. But the other is how decisions are made. Are opportunities equitable internally? And so I highlight that one initially because I think it kind of is an overarching driver that is the most common one that's flagged when we're talking about underrepresented groups. So I want to kind of share from our macro learnings of the data some drivers. We kind of batch drivers together to create narratives of what we've seen inside the data, and there's two specifically. So one is, as it relates to race and ethnicity, is what we call the belonging score. And this is a good way to figure out how you are doing on that journey by being able to sort and look at the different groups inside of your company and understanding what their sense of belonging is inside of your organization. How we measure that is through three drivers: psychological safety. Does a person feel like they can be their true, authentic self at work without fear of negative consequences? Their manager, that one-to-one relationship, which more and more we're realizing is really that critical step to if a person feels like they can be their self, but also if they have that sense of belonging, if they have that sense of growth, and then also the relationship with their peers. These three things really make up the component to help you know, kind of at the macro level, are we doing our part to create sense of belonging for all people inside of our organization, not just for subsets of people. The other one, and this is probably when we're working with companies, especially on their DE&I initiatives, these are the three drivers paired with fairness as it relates especially to race and ethnicity that we're really zooming in on and building action plans and strategies around that. The other one is as it relates to gender, and this actually is one that has escalated, we've seen in the data, especially recently since post-COVID. And that is, we call it the load score for gender. And it really matters. Like, women are consistently scoring lower right now on capacity, rest, and goal support than men across the macro learnings of our data. What does that mean? Not to add too much commentary to it, but everyone in the workforce right now, there's a general sense of like, this is a pressure cooker, and that is being applied to women even more inside the workforce right now. This is what we're seeing in the data is this is even more accentuated in high growth companies. That performance pressure is even heightened. The load score is even more impact. So it's impacting the work of women inside of the workforce. So
Adam, can you talk a bit
Yeah.
about that? What have you seen from maybe just best practices for companies to hear that? I'm like, whoa, what do we do about that? Is that you start the conversation and find out how you can provide support? I mean, what is it? I mean, I've heard some things around this, but what are you guys seeing?
I think the first thing is like, this is where you have to have a highly trusting environment. And like, I would just, if there's one main action as a leader that's listening, is be in on this conversation. Like, this is a reality inside of your company. And so one is increase communication. The other, but with like load score, practically, like what you can do is a couple things. One would be like goal alignment. One of the things we're asking a lot of companies to do is have each individual employee write their list of priorities and then have the manager re-rank those priorities. Like, everyone right now is feeling a performance pressure collectively in the workforce, and they have less time to do more work. And so we want to make sure the most important things are mutually aligned between manager and employee. The other one is time off, like time off in general. The idea of, well, we're a great example. We thought, because we're such a trusting culture, we're unlimited PTO, self-managed policy, COVID hits, and no one's taking a break, period. And it was actually hurting our company. And so we actually saw this load score was really impacting our company. And we made forced PTO, basically, as we mandated that people take time off. And so one of the things a lot of our customers, our best customers, are doing right now is like, you must take at least 2 weeks off before the end of the year, is one of the ways you can kind of mitigate and work on that load score. Keep rolling? Okay, I'll keep rolling here. So I am moving pretty fast. I don't know if that's okay or not. I got point. We can go on forever though. Okay.
Yeah, just to point out that the Q&A, obviously you can write things in chat. That's public, or you can just write straight to the panelists, or if you actually have specific questions as well that you'd want answered, we may answer them live as they come or at the end. So please do fire away at the end of this, just to publicly say we are recording this. You will get the slides afterwards. I'll share a QR code and just some follow-up stuff if you want introductions to hear more about this from the Emplify group. But yeah, please do keep questions coming and comments as well. We love all of that. Over to you, Adam.
Yeah, so we found some nuanced findings as we started looking at kind of the macro trends inside of our data too. And just to give everyone context, we've got oh boy, I lost my camera here. We have hundreds of thousands of employees that take our regular engagement survey. And as we started digging into the data, what we found was oftentimes, because the psychological safety of the majority group, that the majority group often feels more willing to give honest feedback. They feel more secure, they feel safer. And we start to see that in both some of the driver scores, but also in their willingness to give critical qualitative feedback as well. And so one thing just to be mindful of is noting the psychological safety differences between the majority group and underrepresented groups. And then maybe this isn't a huge surprise, and this is one of the reasons probably, Jonathan and all of us are having this conversation, but the higher up you move inside of an org structure, the less likely you are to see diversity. That where there is some diversity, oftentimes is kind of in those entry level, but then as you move up the org, diversity really starts to drop. So we are going to move over to some questions. So Jonathan, if you want, I'll kind of let you drive the question section, or Nicole, or however you want to split this up. And but everybody can chime in, by the way. We'll move over to questions too.
Are you talking specifically about the 17 engagement drivers you already put up there?
Yeah, well, oh yeah. So this one, I'll do this one. This was really for Cam. So this is something that we've talked about. So Cam, I'll just do this one for you. So as you think about what engagement drivers are important to fostering diversity and inclusion, just to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, I would say for me, the very foundational one is psychological safety. And what I mean by that is every single job already has its stressors built in, right? If you're a salesperson, you're carrying a quota. If you're, a developer, you have a roadmap that you have to develop to. So all those things are already built in. But I think being from an underrepresented group has a compounding effect that we don't always think about. And I think that really impacts psychological safety and someone's ability to be there, to bring their whole selves to work. So if you're the only woman on a male-dominated engineering team, if you're the only minority on a, primarily white sales team, like that does add some stress to not having a lot of people that kind of, that are from the same, share some of those same experiences. So I would say building psychological safety, I think is very important. So one example of this is if you have employee resource groups, how can you connect with them to leverage them so that you can connect to these underrepresented groups, right? Like that's already that built-in connective tissue that exists within an organization. And so as you connect with these individuals and you kind of understand what they value, understand what their concerns are, and give them space to have discussions about them, to have them addressed, then you see this psychological safety increase. And I don't know about anyone else, but I think the more I can be myself, the better I perform, the more satisfied I am, and the less turnover we see. Because that's actually another thing is you already have less people from these groups, but the turnover is higher, which is why we kind of see this revolving door phenomenon. So I would say the most important one for me is psychological safety because it just cascades to a lot of the other ones.
That's great. Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about on this topic is professional development. Like if you just to not, because there's kind of two layers to D&I to me. There's like, it's really powerful that right now it has people's attention and you get a lot of like quick, really must needed changes inside of an organization. But if you connect the dots to like, we have a systemic issue that there's not diversity in leadership. And if you want to solve this problem long-term, like one of the things you have to do is have really solid professional development internally that is creating, and this is, we've probably spent some, but one of the things that Cam is really, I feel like has been like enlightening to me on is just like creating opportunities for people. And so, and I think one of the ways you create opportunities long-term is by having an effective professional development program in place so that when opportunities are ready, you're ready to kind of make that next step. And it's more of a taking the long view instead of the like, this is the pressing topic right now.
Yeah, it's good. I'm going to throw some more questions out here if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Cam, you mentioned employee resource group. Question came in. What's an employee resource group?
So in some organizations, they're referred to as affinity groups. So for example, this will be, at Emplify, we have Women of Emplify, and that's just an employee resource group, not only for women, but one that's centered around what are the things that we can do as an organization to empower women. So you have employee resource groups for people of color, for Latino, people of Latino descent, for women, LGBTQ community. So those are the types of groups that I'm talking about.
Okay.
And a lot of times they're a very good avenue to actually understand, to get a good understanding of what challenges are going on, and then what's important as well. So you don't need to start from scratch.
Just because you do a lot of that work, do you want to zoom in practically just a little bit, like of what that's looked like with what, some of what you've done with the like we group inside of Emplify?
Yes, I have a longer experience with Salesforce, so maybe I can give that one instead.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, perfect.
So I was one of the leaders for the employee resource group for people of color. Okay, so Salesforce in Chicago is primarily a sales hub. Okay, so in technology, people of color sit at around 3%, meaning if I'm on a sales floor with 100 people, I have 2 other people that look like me, right? So that kind of stress for a younger professional, in addition to carrying quota, like I was saying, it basically ends up in a bunch of turnover. So one of the things that we did very practically was we just set up a standing recurring meeting. There was no pressure to attend. If you want to join, you can. We started out with 4 people. By the time I was leaving, this was standing room only with 20 to 30 people. So what that does is it basically takes away that pressure cooker that Adam was talking about, right? If I have a stressful situation that I can't talk to somebody about that can relate, I go to LinkedIn and start searching for another job at LinkedIn or Microsoft, right? So we basically gave that sounding board to just say, we're here. We can, you don't actually have to explain too many things. Because like I was saying, women can relate to what other women are going through, right? Working mothers can relate better to what other working mothers are going through. People of color, the same thing. So I would say very practically is we just created that community. That's the first level.
Is that best to come like institution-led or kind of organic grassroots-led?
Organic grassroots.
So
which is why I was saying, if you have these in place, that's a good place to start, because you don't have to build anything from scratch, because these things already exist.
So I don't know. Example, how did it start at Emplify? Adam, did you go to Cam and say, hey, Cam, go on, why don't you start something? Or did you say, hey, did Cam come to you? Cam come to, how did that work? Just kind of break that out.
So I can share. So I actually started the women's group at Amplify about 5 years ago now. I'm not on the board anymore. Cam actually is, which is why it's so cool to see that. But it actually started because of a Slack group. Like we started a Slack group for the women of the company. And it just was very clear that we had things to discuss and we had support. And so I actually took it to our executive team and said, hey, can we start this? And I was going to say, I think it's really important to have the driving force, as Cam said, be grassroots, people who are passionate about the topic in your organization. However, if we didn't have executive support and buy-in, we weren't aligning our programming and our mission of our internal group with the overall mission and vision of the company, that's where you can have a disconnect. And sometimes it can become a vent session. I mean, I remember like our second meeting, it very quickly got away from us and everyone left feeling kind of negative. Like we were just venting about men and why we didn't feel supported. And very quickly we said, we will never leave a meeting on a negative note. We will always look for ways that we can make it positive. What are we going to commit to do? And so I do think that if you have HR or executives lead it, people may not feel safe to be authentic. People may not feel like it's really solving problems, but there needs to be some sort of connected tissue between the organic folks who are really driving the charge and the leadership to make sure it's well supported.
So good. So good. All right. I'm going to suggest we keep going just from a pace. There's some great questions here. And part of our kind of follow up is if you want to talk further about these things, you've got great resources in Cam, Adam, Nicole. Don't come to me. I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to figure it out myself. So, but this is great. I'll kind of springboard, but there are some great questions here as well in the Q&A box. We'll get to those as well. So,
well, do you want me to do these, or because we can just answer their questions and use these if we need them. I'm happy to do whatever's best. Okay, well, let's talk just a little bit about KPIs for diversity, because a lot of times I think people show up to this and they're looking for like really practical things. And just like Jonathan, like Gabby, who's our director of people, and I right away were like, I think the key for us is really clear metrics that we track and we're transparent with. That was kind of our first task. And so so that's one of the things we're working on. I'll share some of the things we like practically implemented, but Cam, do you have anything you want to add to this one too?
Yeah, I'm the finance guy in me loves the super simple metrics, so what's the diversity in your organization at a macro level, right? At a micro level, what is it at the entry level, management and leadership, right? So that really tells you how you're doing as an organization, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's always a place to start, but those super simple metrics, I think, tell you where you need to focus. And then I also like to look at turnover, because again, the added pressure of being from an underrepresented group, if you don't have that safety, also results in higher turnover. So I would look at that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've really been challenging ourselves on with recruitment is to pick, so for us, 15% of all candidates that we make sure that for every single role that we have 15% of candidates that are from minority groups that make it into that initial pool, or that make it through the first screen, basically. And since we're proactively recruiting, we're making sure that and it's the same thing, is that we're sourcing opportunities. We've got a couple like public commitments, because we know, just probably similar to Jonathan, part of the thing when you put yourself out here like this is like it forces accountability. And so we've recognized that. So we have minimum speaking engagements that we've committed to, both externally and then educational, both resources and fundraising as well, that we've decided that we're like committed to. So we have at least 2 education sessions where we bring external resources in to educate the workforce twice a year, and then 2 times a quarter to make sure we're doing things like this, like speaking. And then the same with, I was just thinking practically, I was just like looking through some of our lists we've got, and we're actually pretty happy to share this. If anybody's interested in our commitments that we've made. We try to open source our work. And so I'm sure we'd be happy to send over, like, here are the commitments, like, here's the diversity and inclusion promise we put on all of our job postings. Here's how we do bias training now before every single interview. And then I had one other one I wanted to share, but it's the professional development. So we're building our professional development program, and it's the applicants, the amount of applicants that are from underserved groups, and making sure that we get a substantial portion of the people participating from underrepresented groups as well.
So I figured that when you said that, the chat was going to blow up. People going, I want to see that. I want to see that. People show up to these things because we want to grow in this. I offered this last week and had a lot of people. I said, I'm happy to share. It's a bit intimate, but I'm happy to share our journey map. Basically, it's a 2-page doc which just says, this is where we're going over the next 3 to 10 years. And I shared that with Adam, and he shared Emplify's sort of position journey statement where they're going. It's just really helpful to have that camaraderie and see what other people are doing, because it challenges, it stirs us up, inspires us, and says, okay, what does that look like for us? There's nothing new under the sun. We're not really that original as people. We take little bits of everyone else's stuff and we go, well, that's me, that's us, that's me. That fits within. It's kind of what Nicole was saying. It's got to align with what the vision and the purpose of the organization is. Otherwise you have a whole, everybody with their pet projects are going, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to be here. So as it comes under the vision of the organization, but has a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a massive diverse thought and perspective. I say that to our company, this is the least diverse we'll ever be. And making a statement like that, because I'm not happy with where we're at today, it's like, whoa, that takes work. Because what if we went the other way? Oh no, somebody resigned. No, we're now more, it's like, no, we've got to have a commitment to this. And so it is a fight, but I think getting other people's input in is really, really important. So again, we'll have that kind of follow up afterwards. If you say, listen, I want that. More resources around these journeys. We've got a whole library of resources, of free resources that have helped us with bias training and diversity recruitment and all kinds of stuff out there, video courses through LinkedIn and a bunch of other stuff. We'd happily share all that with you. So yeah, this is good.
Well, and along those lines, Jonathan and Adam, I thought of this when you were talking about professional development. I think it's so important to recognize if you're not in a position that you're a very diverse company, or especially if you don't have diversity in the upper levels of leadership, I think it's really important to look for those resources outside of the company. And again, you'll hear Adam and I say this, CAM is an amazing example of this, of connecting internally to folks external that kind of represent that diversity, who are maybe a person of color in the executive spot at a different company, or a woman CEO or a woman product leader that maybe you don't have that internally, but how can you kind of open your doors up and not be so focused that I have to self-source diversity for my entire organization? If you're real about the fact that maybe you have an all-male white executive team, you're not going to fire people, for the sake of it, but how can you start going, in the individual contributor layer and that manager layer, and help them find the mentorship with people who look like them, that represent that diversity. And like Adam said, come into your organization and share their story, and make it so that when you do have a spot available, you now have people that are ready to take that on, that are from a minority group.
That's great. One of the things we talked about on last week's webinar, I'll just say it again for those who missed it, was we looked at a lot of organizations, some of the best hires, best meaning highly engaged and performing well, high engagement, high performance, come from internal referrals. And we have a lot of our workforce being internal referrals. They know somebody, they were referred in there. There's a a level of like, I want to do you proud. You invited me in here. You referred me. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let people down. And so people come hit the ground running a little bit faster. Now, having said that, most people's circles are lacking in personal circles, lack in diversity. And so if you look at all your internal referrals and you're off balance, look at yourselves as a company and say, rather than going, oh man, we got a diversity issue. I have a diversity issue. Let me look at my circles and say, okay, the people I'm spending time with, who's coming over to my house, who am I going out for drinks with, who am I interacting with on a day-to-day basis? And it goes way, way broader than that. What am I listening to? What kind of podcasts am I just feeding myself on stuff that just sounds like me? And I surround myself with that, or I actually challenge myself with diverse thought and perspective. Because those are the people, if we want to grow internal referral recruitment, rather than kind of, oh, where are these diverse? They're everywhere. We just need to open our eyes and build relationships on a broader level. So that's something we're challenging our company to, saying, listen, let's look at all our own personal circles and increase those. And it's not a fix overnight, it's a journey. And so like, okay, that's what I really am going to do to expand my own circles, and professional circles, as well as just pure personal and relational. Cool. I'm going to ask another question here that just popped in. How do you ensure integrity and ethics in sensitive demographic data? Employees may self-identify in the spirit of getting support and understanding, but this information could then potentially be used to hold people back or remove them. How do we prevent this?
Yeah, great question. I think, and it is a little bit different in the applicant process too than it is with like the existing customer base. So with like, I can just speak specifically to our measurement tool, right? So we protect anonymity and confidentiality from the like leadership to the employee, and we really serve as that bridge between the two. And so then what we can do is we're not looking at the single individual. We're looking at groups and where trends emerge. It's that same thing I shared earlier. It's where are there common issues. So we follow what's called the rule of 5. It just means we never will expose data that is smaller than a group of 5 people. And that will kind of help create that safe environment that creates some protection for folks as well.
Nicole, you want to talk to this about from talent acquisition as well?
So,
go ahead, Adam. Nicole. No, if you have an answer, please go for it.
I was just saying, with talent acquisition, so we're still, I would call this kind of a work in progress for us. So we have a set goal, and our tool, we use Greenhouse, allows us to, if someone self-selects in, at the same time, it's not perfect right now. Like, and there's also a balance there too for the same thing. You're trying to make sure that you're, people want to make sure they're earning the job because they earn the job, and they may not feel safe exposing that information, that sort of thing. So I kind of call that one a work in progress, and almost like by picking the metric, it's a best effort, and we're still committed to exposing the information we have to the company to make sure that we're still holding ourselves accountable.
And I think one thing Adam mentioned, but just to give a little of the why behind it, we have started doing unconscious implicit bias training for our hiring teams before they go in to do an interview. And what that does is, if you talk about it, folks are more likely to be aware of any unconscious or implicit bias as they go into that conversation. And so if someone, if it's an external diversity, like you can know you're a woman, or if you're doing a video chat and you can see, it's someone from a minority group, by going through that training, you're either more aware of those and therefore able to catch yourself, or you're less likely to show those biases. If someone's self-identified as that as well. So from an ethics or sharing or holding people back, as Adam said, it is a work in progress. But if you put those steps in place to just keep educating yourself and check your bias when you go into those conversations, it can kind of help really identify and look at that person for their qualities and not any sort of diverse prejudice you might have against that.
It's almost like a little commercial here. So next Thursday, November 12th at 11 a.m. Central, we have the third part of our series, which is removing subjectivity and bias in your hiring process. Ta-da! So E. Jones, who asked that question, great question, and it will be answered in unpacked in a way, just a way that you can remove major bias in your hiring and recruiting process, which is obviously this is all part of that journey, isn't it? It's kind of like, okay, how we bring people into our organization, how we onboard them in our organization. There's not a one size fits all on onboarding. We are in this age where we can customize everything for people. What if we customize onboarding? I heard that people decide how long they're going to stay at an organization within the first 72 hours. What? 72 hours? Meaning they go home and process it with somebody, neighbor, friend, significant other, and say, what do you think of the new gig? Like, yeah, it's okay. I don't know how long I'll be there, but completely unprepared for me. You know, they took me on this little road show of all the team, took me out for lunch. It made me squirm in my seat. I am not a big social person. I felt super uncomfortable, not put me in a place of confidence. Wow. 72 hours, they're making these judgment calls of how long they're going to stay. We have this data that we have now on people's behaviors, personalities, you know, all of these kind of things. Well, we can actually customize onboarding for people. And then how do we engage, retain, and develop people and see them grow in an organization? There are so many aspects of this topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't think it's going to suddenly come to an end. I'm really kind of inspired by Emplify talking about before every interview. Is this right? Before every interview, you'll have a bias refresher?
We do, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And it's someone asked a question on how we built that training. So the way most of our stuff, what we do, it's a hybrid, right, of consuming and utilizing a lot of resources. So a lot of that was based off of like Google's work of like the right before you do the interview, you consume the content. And we found like a variety of resources and then kind of created our own version on it. Dennis also brought up, I do agree, making sure that the panel is diverse is a really key component to that as well. So well said, and that is kind of part of our strategy as well as we're building out our interview teams. You know, we're like a big fixed interview, so set questions to compare questions and really compare the quality of the content, and then get a hiring team. One of the things that the book even talks about is this concept of your cultural rock stars, integrating them into your hiring process so that they are helping understand, like they are represented. Different layers inside the organization need to be a part of that hiring team too, as opposed to it just being like tiers. That's one of the ways you can kind of avoid like the I don't know what I call them, plastic interviews, where it's just this kind of back and forth that everybody's lying to each other the whole time, type of thing.
Yeah, that's great. More questions here. This is great. I know we're like coming up on end of our time together, but what if the company tries to put this task to create? Oh, sorry, we answered that one. Oh, did we? No, we didn't. What if the company tries to put this task to create these groups or have a DE&I program on the person of color in the company? It's kind of like, oh, thought I'd ask you, Cam. Just don't know why on this one. But,
just conveniently.
You know, it's kind of the old. We joked around this a little bit last week on our webinar about how we're in this world right now. Every advertising, every marketing thing, it has to have, you know, we've got one person of this, one person. It's just like, all right, come on now. And we've had clients who said, we can't do a culture video. We'd love to, but we don't have enough outward diversity. So we're just not going to do one. You're like, oh my gosh, you know, these are wrestles that company have, you know. What are your thoughts on that? How do you tackle that one?
So I think, this touches on the question that you asked about, should these initiatives should they be initiated by leadership or HR or grassroots by the employees? So I think to answer that question, we should always let these things start off in an organic way and a grassroots way, initiated by employees. So I think if you have only one or two people of color, then support them, right? Can you bring in more people, or can you expose them to more opportunities? I think only when you have that connective tissue that comes up, when people connect with each other, when they find that common ground, and then they need support from the organization. I think that's a good time for that to happen. And actually, a crazy thing that happens, and I've seen this many times over, is once you're aligned, even if you don't have that many people, once you're aligned and you know what's important and what needs to be addressed, there's actually a lot in common between minorities and people from the majority group. And so what you see is you actually get a lot of allies involved. Now, They don't know how to get involved until they know how to get involved. And I think a good way for that to happen is basically have that, that connection to basically say, we care about professional development, we care about these things. And then all of a sudden you have a group, we had a group of 5 people that turned into 30, and then that turned into 100 with allies. And so that kind of thing, I think when it's grassroots, starts by employees, the organization supports them, it can then grow to involve other people where capacity is not actually a problem.
And I think it is okay, if you recognize that there's a gap here and you want to start this as an HR leader, I think it's okay to say, hey, we would love to support this effort. But if you don't have someone in the organization that maybe raises their hand to run with it, maybe it's not the right time for you to start that. But by creating space so that people can raise their hands and know that the organization will be supportive of them, again, it all comes back to the foundation of psychological safety. I happen to have psychological safety to be able to go to leadership and say, I want to start a women's empowerment group. But not everyone's going to have that. And so I think if you can show that from leadership, but that you don't then take the reins and make it your own, there is probably a little bit of a give and take there if you haven't had diversity as a forefront in your strategy.
Yeah, I do think one thing that this taps into as well is I think progress over perfection is really matters. Is that it's so easy with topics like this that are sensitive and maybe there's some shame or that what we do is we hide and we cower as opposed to leaning in. And so if it doesn't happen organically, just being willing to communicate and open the dialogue with your company and give people the opportunity to raise their hand, progress will happen through just having the courage to have the conversation. That DE&I assessment we looked at of all the companies who have surveyed now and used that, 42% of employees say that they wish their company talked more about this. 42%. So I think that it's saying just be in on the conversation. It's not having the perfect answer right now. It's just beginning to have the dialogue and continuing the dialogue.
I was interviewing somebody for our company in the last month or so, and it was interesting. They were a person of color. One of us brought up diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I just said, "Hey, this is where we're at right now. Not happy with it. Excited to have you be part of the solution." And it was kind of it just felt both sides going, "Oh, I'm glad we can actually talk about this. I'm glad we can actually talk about something that's an outward, perspective of diversity, a dimension of diversity is the word I was looking for, an outward dimension of it, and just talking openly of this whole progress, not perfection, and not trying to pretend that we're somewhere where we're not. Just say, listen, we're on a journey and you're a part of our journey. But everyone in our organization, it's not it was refreshing to talk about it openly. And I think that is something, if you've got an organization that's open and vulnerable and transparent in your communication, can be really helpful. I understand there could be different perspectives on that. So I'm okay to, that's part of the vulnerability of this journey. I'm oh gosh, we're going to put ourselves out there, open to more criticism. And I'm okay, I want to have that posture of we don't know and we just want to grow, and progress is what we're going for. So. All right, a couple more questions here. We're looking at a training program from an outside vendor to help us train our leaders on DE&I. Any suggestions on how to make it feel forced? I'm assuming that meant not forced, and just seen as a leadership competency that is needed. Thoughts on that? How do you make this program feel less forced but more organic?
So I think part of it goes in how it's messaged. I think culture is, I'm not going to understate the importance of culture here. So one is, as a leadership, do you actually believe in it, right? Do you actually feel like this is a worthwhile thing to do? So I would say that's the first thing, is really communicate. Second, I think from a stakeholder standpoint, we do have some people that feel like diversity efforts somehow lower the bar. Right? We do hear this. Why does it need to be about diversity? Why don't we just get the right people or the best candidates for the job, right? So I think it's really important to message it in that way, right? It's not lowering the bar. we're actually trying to get broader perspectives into the business. And I think the third thing is broader perspectives in the business is actually good for business. This is not an altruistic thing that you're doing. It's actually good for business. There's study after study after study that's been done to say diverse teams outperform those that are not. So I would say the messaging is very important. And then as far as how do you actually implement it and make it less forced, I would say it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's, you know, we're not going to get to the other side by having, you know, so just really have, again, culture matters. Have open discussions. People can disagree. People can work together. And that's the only way that you kind of get to the other side. And yes, it can be forced. That's okay. But that's kind of how progress starts, right? You know, when you go to the gym, when you sign up for the gym January 1st, it doesn't feel natural right away. You know, maybe a couple months later. So it's okay for that to happen in the beginning.
This is great. I'm actually just sharing my screen real quick right now because I know some people are having to duck out and wondering, hey, how do I get follow-up here? How do I get an introduction to Emplify? Obviously, you can go to Emplify's website and grab a hold of those guys there. But if you'd like an introduction, this whole area, just as well, this time next week, we are having the third part of our series of how to remove subjectivity and bias in your hiring process. So please do check out that. If you are not familiar with the QR code, literally open up your camera on your phone and just point it. You don't have to click, just point it at the little dotty square. And it'll open up a website automatically for you, and you can we'll make sure you get an Emplify introduction. We'll make sure we send you the deck afterwards and the recording of this if you want other people to see it. We'll just make sure that you're resourced with what you need. And then, of course, you know, we're here to help with other things that we do. So just point and click at the QR code or not. So yeah, there you go. All righty. I don't know what time are we wrapping up here? Are we over our time or is this the Q&A time? Somebody.
Oh. I think this is your show. You get to decide.
Yeah.
What we can do.
If you guys can stay, we are booked till noon.
Let's say we're going to stick around here for another 10 to 12 minutes here. All righty. I don't even know what that word is. I need to become more diverse in my communication skills. Does this system work with Illusion? It sounds like something from a James Bond.
Is that like an integration, Mary? Like a yes. Which system? Like measuring or the QR code? I have so many clarifying questions. That's a great thing.
I'll tell you what.
Ask clarifying questions when you don't know something.
That's good. This one sounds very specific. Reach out to Nicole. You can hit her in chat. Nicole, maybe you just give your email address and we can get that one tackled. All right.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would happily share some links and references to of what we're doing around design implicit bias trainings. We're new to this, so we're very excited about all of these areas, but happily do that. Okay.
Jonathan, we should be able to share our one-sheeter as well on that. If you want to see like the thing that we have our interview team review prior to the interview, we should be able to share that out as well.
Okay. Hannah, you're on. Can you add another checkbox to the follow-up saying, I'd love to see Emplify and or Titus's diversity journey, whatever document we'll call that. And we'll make sure we get that specific. I don't want to send it out to everyone if they don't want to see it. All right, great. I will make sure that goes out. Oof, what other questions do we have here? Okay, we're looking at, oh no, we covered that one. Oh man, we're doing all right. We're doing all right. I'm getting all panicky here, but I don't need to be. Yes, we're hitting all of these. Are there more questions coming in here? If there are more questions specifically.
One of the ones that we had in our deck but we didn't get to, and Cam, I think you and I talk about this a lot, is just what are some of the obstacles to creating inclusive cultures? I mean, we've kind of hit on some of them in different things, but just kind of rounding us out. What are some of the barriers here?
I can go first. I think number one is just that organizational inertia. You know, I think Adam touched on this as well, is I think the pressure to get it perfect out the gate versus just starting, you know, one foot in front of the other and just making some progress. I think that a lot of organizations end up not doing anything because again, they want to have all the answers right away. They want to have everything figured out right away. And I think it's more important to just say, what are some things we can do realistically? And how can we start working towards that? And we're going to be making improvements along the way, right? So I think the CFO at the last company I was, would always say better, never done. You know, and I think that's always the spirit in everything is how can we get better today than we were yesterday? And what are some things we can do? So.
For those of you who were on the last week's webinar, Beth Ridley was a consultant that we brought in and her organization to help us on this journey. And she has a 12 and 18-month program to really jumpstart this and getting it running through culturally. But she said to me when I sat with her over a meal one time, she said, Jonathan, you cannot outsource diversity. If you're looking for somebody to come and fix this for you, it will never get fixed. And I'm like, what do you mean? You know, I was like, I thought I could just hire somebody to fix. She goes, nope, starts with you. She's like, you have to come to a deep-seated belief system that something needs to change, and you need to know why. You need to know why it needs to change. It needs to be embedded into your purpose of why you exist. And she was talking about a business imperative, not just a moral imperative. And I was like, that sounds a bit dirty. You know, it sounds like business imperative. Like if I do this, I make more money. You're trying to monetize it, you know, like it kind of a bit squirmy at first. And she said, no, you just need to understand that there is a business imperative to this. And it's best for your people to grow. You're trying to provide a future for all of your people. Your company will be more sustainable, more profitable, faster growing if you actually care about these things. And I was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't like ding, 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 you know, oh, make more money. It was like, wow, I really need to understand this on a broader level. And it took me months to write our kind of a position of where we're going and why this journey was important. But the company felt, oh man, suddenly Jonathan really cares about this stuff. Where did that come from? But it was something that I really do. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is imperative. And it really helped me understand kind of why we're doing these things. We've created this internal group, not by me, you know, but I'm a part of that and I want to be involved, but I don't run it. I don't own it. But it's kind of the grassroots thing, but I don't just say, peace out, I'm not a part of that. I'm like, no. I am a team member who plays a role here. So it's been a great start to our journey. All right, last question here. Can you talk a little bit more about making adjustments to diversity when staff are already in place? Especially given COVID and most people are not looking to leave their jobs right now. So increasing visual diversity can be slowed.
So yeah, I might just add let's all play the long game too. We're not just, you know, we're trying to make long-term changes. And so if you are in a situation like that, what can you do as far as increasing the education of your workforce, creating more allies at your company? Really, as you do start to hire, strongly considering your referral program and thinking up different ways to source from different pools to try to get a more diverse candidate base. I'm just thinking out loud as I understand. I mean, I know that is a challenge, but I don't think just because you don't have a hire to make, it doesn't mean that there's not progress you could make. Or it could just be as much as surfacing up the conversation, running the assessment, showing, hey, this is top of mind. We're going to have this conversation in this season too. We're not waiting for that perfect moment. We're going to keep talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll respond on that one. Our journey on this is a journey. We've got some KPIs around our 3-year goals. What will it look like in 3 years and how we're going to be intentional around the different dimensions of diversity. And we've got a graph, which if anyone wants to see it, kind of shows how it's going to look like over the next 3 years with different dimensions. That's been really helpful. And this is a shameless plug. 80% of our business is recruiting, passive candidate headhunting. There is a lot of recruiting going on right now. People are willing to move. There are a lot of people who are top performers who are just not that happy with how their company has handled COVID. And they've seen things they just not liked. And so they're going, maybe I am not a good fit for the future of this. The values are not aligned. And any number of reasoning. We are heavy busting at the seams on recruitment right now. So cool.
I think really just to add on that too, I think, you know, Cam said it, when you go to hire, it's not that you're lowering the bar, you're raising it. However, I've said that the tokenism can be real. And so if you have one hire, it's okay if the best candidate isn't a woman or a person of color. Obviously, you want to try to make it. And so I think that's when you look internally and say, how do I treat those in minority groups internally? Am I making fair decisions when I'm promoting? Do I treat all employees fairly? Am I giving people opportunities? What is the professional development plan? And if you aren't able to expand your visual diversity because of COVID, you're not growing, you don't have a hire right now, that's okay. You can be working on your internal journey and ensuring that you have the processes in place to treat your employees fairly.
I just, as a last minute, I don't gain anything from this. The reason we have Emplify here is they've helped us on our journey. Their assessment has been very, very helpful. They have a diversity and inclusion assessment. What's it called? Emplify team?
It's on the website. It's the Diversity and Inclusion Assessment.
That's a great name.
Very, very cleverly titled, and it's free to use. And that is a great place to start. If you're like, what is my first step? Run the assessment, have the conversation with your executive team, and see the areas where you might be strong, weak, to help like where to kind of begin the journey. Okay,
two things I heard there: diversity and inclusion assessment, and the other one, which we all love, free.
Yep. And then we have other stuff you can pay us for down the road, but that's a good start. So,
like every good drug dealer, first one's free. We're gonna get you so hooked. But yeah, highly recommend it. I took it. We've started with a small segment of our company because we love assessments. We got assessments and surveys all the time. People are like, no more. But we took the DE&I assessment through Amplify. Very insightful. And it just helped us with our journey of where we need to focus on. So highly recommend that. This has been great. I want to say a massive thank you to Cam, Adam, Nicole. I'm glad you stuck in there, Nicole. It's been great, very insightful. I know that there are more questions here in chat. We are copying those down. We'll do our best to answer them as well. If you want to, I will flash up the QR code one more time for those of you who didn't get to snap away at that. We will make sure that we'll get you the documents that Adam referred to about the Amplify's diversity and inclusion journey, the Titus one. We'll happily introduce you to Emplify if you want that. If you want to take their survey, just go straight to their site. It's right here in chat. And of course, please do be in touch. You can find both of our companies anywhere on social media. And lastly, get this book on Amazon. You can't see the book. It's called Lead Like a Human. If I hold it right in front of me, Adam wrote this book, and it is a gem. And lastly, please do sign up for our webinar next week on the removing subjectivity and bias in your hiring process. All righty. We have about 90 seconds before you're transitioning to your next meetings or whatever you have on your calendar, or some of you, it's the end of the day. You're in Paris. Wow, sounds great. All right. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.